Welcome to Sneak Peek GG, another episode where we'll be looking at Break, Enter, and Repeat, a really cool upcoming Thief game. And I'm here with Frederico, the creator behind it. This is not his first game. He's made some awesome games in the past, and really excited to have you on today.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. It's always great to just talk to someone who is also passionate about games. So I'm really looking forward to having this chat with you.
Thanks. Yeah, it's it caught my eye. Some very unique gameplay. I'm a fan of mix of strategy and stealth, and this one really dives into that experience, the planning and execution of it all, and the overarching strategy of being a thief. But before we get into the game, wanted to talk a bit more about your background because, like I said, not your first game coming out. You did a Reddit post I saw that really intrigued me where you showed the ratings of each of your games on Steam as they came out, and each one was better than the last. I think it started with like mixed, positive, very positive, and you're like, goal for this one is overwhelmingly positive. I mean, even getting very positive is tough to do. So. Yeah, so I'd
Yeah.
love to hear when. So looking back, when was that first game released? When did your journey start with the solo indie dev?
When it comes to developing games professionally, I started roughly 10 years ago. I actually come from many years of web development. I've been working on web development for also roughly like 10 years. Um, at some point, I found myself out of a job,
Mm-hmm.
which was a very nicely paid job, but was also a bit boring, to be honest. And then I thought, okay, this is maybe my opportunity. I had already been working a bit on a hobby project. I just wanted to learn Unity. And I thought, okay, maybe this is a good opportunity for me. I had some savings. I was in an okay position financially. I thought, okay, this is the time for me to finally do the thing I have always wanted to do, which is to make games. So that was in 2015, 2016, and that led to the release of Winds of Trade, which was the first game I released, which was mostly a solo project, not entirely, but mostly a solo project, and it was also self-published, um, which I kind of learned my lesson about how hard all the publishing side of things is. So that is something I'm probably not going to be doing again, this self-publishing part. But yeah,
Gotcha.
that's how actually things started. It came from a very long love for games and game development, and this dream that I've had for a very long time until the circumstances just kind of happened in a way.
Gotcha. And the job before, were you in game development before, or was it a different type of corporate
Uh,
job?
to to some extent, yeah, I've been working for a games company for some years, but doing backend development. So I was doing work on the server side of multiplayer games, so not actually developing games, but uh, games adjacent, so to speak. But then I went into all sorts of different directions. I was making apps as well, and a lot of web development. Then
Uh,
I ended up working on some more corporate type things. So
Gotcha. So you
business side of things, yeah.
mostly solo dev your first game, and am I correct that Break Enter Repeat will be your fourth game, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, correct.
And
So it was, yeah, sorry,
yeah,
go ahead.
your second game improved on that. How long after your first did you start working on the second?
Well, after Winds of Trade was released, I kept working on Winds of Trade for a while, releasing updates and adding new content to the game. And then it was roughly a 2-year development cycle till Automachef, the second game, was out.
Okay, so 2 years on the second game. And tell me a bit about the second game. You had the learnings from the first game, second game, taking those, the publishing. Was it still a solo project, the or mostly solo project the second game?
Mostly solo, but less than the first one. So I'm actually the only full-time employee in my studio, so to speak.
All
So
right.
I'm in charge of all of the game design and all of the programming. But then I work with a whole team of people who are freelancers, but they are we have been working together on many of these games, and we have a good chemistry going on. So we have a 3D artists and sound designers and the composer and the UI designer. All these people are also contributing. But when it comes to actually leading the project, it's myself. Yeah.
Gotcha. And what were some of your experiences between or during the second and the third game? Um, looking back on kind of the phases of life during that time.
Yeah. So originally, I started with Power to the People maybe half a year, which was the third title. Around half a year after Automachef was launched, approximately. And once again, I took all the lessons that I learned from Automachef when it comes to how to make the game have a proper art direction and how to have a proper personality, so to speak, which is something that was a bit of an afterthought with Automachef. So that was one of the lessons I learned, and also the importance um, of listening to the community as the project develops while you are developing still before release. So there were some lessons that were learned in Automachef as well that and I applied to Power to the People as well.
Gotcha. And Power to the People, very well received game from what I saw. And that was a different genre as well.
Yeah, so they are both in a bit in the resource management genre to some extent, but Automachef is more of a puzzle game where you're just placing all these different machines to build an automated kitchen. Power to the People is kind of like a city builder, but not really because you're not building the city itself, but you're building the energy infrastructure for the city, the power plants and the cables and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a bit of a departure from the genre, but it's still the same type of game that I enjoy making and that I enjoy playing, which is games that are a bit more cerebral as to in the sense of they require some planning and some thought, and you don't necessarily need to rush so much, or you can just figure out one of the many different ways in which you can solve a problem. Right? So I think that's at the core of all the games so far that I have been working on, and also this current title.
Yeah,
The,
the
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 goal is always to present the player with as many options as possible, and then there will be many that will work and many that won't.
yeah, there's the still definitely in Break Enter Repeat the whole management side of it, managing the personnel, the equipment, your base, even having a car and how to look for the
Mhm.
right targets. So moving into this thief game, what kind of inspired this theme of a game?
Um, I think that the main influence for me wanting to make this game was this game I think released maybe in the mid 90s. Was this German game called the Claw, which was translated into English as The Thing. I don't know how well known it is. I know it had a sequel to The Thing 2 that came in the early 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a game that I played as a kid, and it really stuck with me for decades, literally. So it's this game which is also about burglaries, about breaking and entering, but it's all about planning and getting the right crew and getting the right intel and choosing the gear you're going to need and all of that. So that game is, I would say, one of the main sources of inspiration for Break and Repeat.
Got you.
Um, And then I would say that there's like a whole bunch of other games that have influenced uh, this title. Uh, like even you could say like Sid Meier's Pirates, right? Because it has this idea that there's no game over condition. It's a game that just lets you play until the end of your career without fully losing. So that's also how we treat failure in Break and Repeat. We have these setbacks, but not really a game over. And you could say that the visual style is inspired by The Sims. I think that one is
Yeah.
maybe a bit obvious.
I was gonna say that.
Already.
Yeah, even the layout of the buildings a A little Sims on
Yeah, yeah.
the
So it's
visuals.
inspired by this isometric charm that you had in the original, in the first Sims game, that was so brilliant. And I remember when that came out, I was actually playing Sims a lot. I was even creating my own content for the game, creating mods and new types of furniture and so on. So that is also part of the inspiration for the game. Because of the visuals and also how you control the characters, right? Just go and you click on something and you get this little radial menu with different options. And it's always inspired by The Sims. Yeah.
Gotcha. And looking at The Sims, is there a social element to this game too? For instance, I was just trying to go on a heist and someone didn't trust me enough for the heist, or if you're trying to sell something to the pawn shop, get rejected if they're not too happy with you.
Yeah, so this game is also to some extent about cultivating relationships, in the sense that you are going to be able to get better deals out of your fenced goods if you have good connections with the pawn shop owner, or you might get more advantages if you have good connections, good relationships with your fellow crew members. And how are you going to find new targets? Well, you need to find people who are going to trust you with that information. And so there's also a bit of a social element to that as well.
Got you. And yeah, definitely. I love one way to build the social element. Find new targets. That you just go buy someone a beer at the bar. Good way
Yeah,
to.
exactly. You just
Good.
go into this pub where all these criminals or wannabe criminals are hanging out. Then you're going to find someone who has some information or some new crew member, and you can even find people who are going to teach you new skills, or that can maybe help you appraise things. Maybe you have stolen something and you don't know, is this actually worth something or not.
Yep.
Or maybe if you have the right connections, you will find someone who will be able to help you out and say, oh, this is actually worth a lot of money or not.
Got you. And you mentioned there was a difficult time for you at some point personally to stick with game dev. When was that? When did was that a time for you?
I mean, you could argue that in an indie game dev is just a constant sequence of difficult times. But I would say one that really sticks out is that before I was about to release Automachef, I'm originally from Argentina, so at that time I had just moved to Denmark, which is where I live now. So I was in a new country and I moved here just by myself. So it was a bit of a difficult time for me personally as well. But I was maybe 3 quarters into the development of Automachef back at that time. And I had also just started a new relationship with the woman who is now my wife.
Uh-huh.
So I had all of these things happening at the same time, right? I have this deadline. I have committed with Team 17, which was the publisher of Automachef, for a release date. And new country, new relationship, this deadline, and I've been working on Automachef for 2 years, and I was worried about what's going to happen because I think that is the most emotional part of game dev, that you are creating something in this vacuum, in almost not in isolation really, but almost, and then you're pouring your soul into something and then you release it into the world and you don't know if it will be loved, if it will be hated, or even worse, it's going to be ignored. So at that point, I was, I think, very close to burning out and to just say, yeah, I don't know if I'm actually cut for this. I don't know if I
Mm.
can continue with this anymore. But I got through the pre-launch panic, and actually, Torchlight was very well received, and it sold better than expected too. So in the end, it ended up being a successful project, and it's a game that I hold very, very dear to my heart. But there were some times when it was not so easy.
And I think that's a common theme a lot of devs face too. And you said something that kind of resonates, that working in a vacuum. Especially solo devs who are not solo or team where you're full time and sometimes people are contracted out or part time, and you're heavily invested in, because that also means there's a strong personal tie to the success of the game, a very strong emotional tie. But during that point where there's a vacuum, where it's not in the hands of the community, where you're building something, or you see other games come out with success or other games that flop, and it all impacts you. It's something a lot of developers face, doubt, and it's probably one of the most difficult parts of building a game. I think so. And do you have any recommendations for other developers kind of facing that time in the game development process? You being got through it, came through more successful than ever, releasing your best performing game after that. But yeah, any recommendations there for people?
Um, but I would say that it's quite important to have limit the scope of what you're doing. I think that's maybe the most important tip I can give, because it's very easy sometimes to get carried away in saying, if I add this other thing to my game and this other thing and this other thing, then it will be better. Because at some point you start this cycle where you're always thinking that the game is not ready. That okay, I need to add this small thing and this I need to fix this other one, and then it just never ends. So I think it's important also when to learn how to say, okay, this is good enough, and this needs to be out there now, and whatever happens, happens. Otherwise, you're also putting yourself through all of this extra stress. At some point, you need to just release the thing. So I would say that maybe the best advice for how to deal with all this very stressful time is to try to limit it, to make it as short as possible.
Yeah, because there's always that one more feature you want to add or
Mm-hmm.
clean up, right?
And it happens to me as well. And even now that I'm nowhere near to the release of Break and the Repeat, but I'm always thinking, oh, I want to send a build to a potential publisher or something like that. Oh, but
Mm.
maybe I need to fix this one more bug and I need to add this one more tool or this one more level. So at some point you need to limit your scope of work, I would say.
Yeah, yeah, make it keep it reasonable, or it won't get out the door. And of course, finding that right time to get it in the hands of people. And you've worked, so you didn't work with a publisher for the first game, and have you for the other games you did move on to work with a publisher?
Yeah, so for Automachef, I worked with Team 17, and that was an incredible experience.
Yeah, that's a
Especially seeing that I was
big
such,
name publisher.
yeah, so I was such a big fan of all the Worms games when I
Yeah.
was growing up. So that was kind of like a dream come true. And I have to say, when the people from Team 17 reached out to me, because I didn't reach out to them, they reached out to me when they saw the game I was building. They just saw something on Twitter. I honestly thought it was some kind of weird prank. I didn't think it was an actual thing. But no, it was real, and that was a fantastic experience because they have, of course, so much expertise and has so many talented people who can provide guidance and help make the game as good as possible. So that was brilliant. That was my first experience working with the publisher. It was brilliant. And then for Power to the People, I work with Critivo, which you might know because they have this game called The Universum. I think that's probably the biggest title.
I'm familiar, yeah.
And that was also a good experience. And I think that they were able to contribute lots of ideas about how to make the game a bit more attractive and to have a bit more pizza, so to speak.
Got you.
But sometimes it's a bit hard to be, the premise is, oh, this is a city builder game about electricity, about power plants and electric substations and about high voltage lines. And yeah, it's a bit hard to make that be sexy. So I think they really help with that.
Yeah, it's a
Mhm.
tough pitch to describe, at least, I guess. Let people know the
Yeah,
goal of
yeah,
the
yeah,
game. So you've seen the benefits of working with a publisher in that sense as well.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I was curious too. I saw you put an article, and we talked briefly before this about AI in gaming, and that's something that I love to discuss and touch on because it is such a big topic right now, especially with how it can help. and you did a really great job finding ways to use AI as a tool for you as a developer. Um, so I guess love to hear more. There are a few different things you did, and I can put a link up to this article as well that you put
Mhm.
out about it. But yeah, love to hear a bit how you used AI to help assist you.
Yeah, and this is a topic that is really interesting to me, not only because some of these AI generative AI tools are part of my workflow right now, and I'm talking about generative AI in the sense of AI that can generate images, sounds, 3D meshes, and code, and so on, and of course these large language models.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that generative AI is a great tool. It's really good for prototyping. It's really good for brainstorming and trying out different ideas and coming up with different ideas. And it's really good also for solving common problems very quickly. So if you already know, oh, there already exists an algorithm that does this and that, and then you can get an AI to write the code for you. And it's most likely going to be fine. Or if you want to create some art assets, some images, or some 3D meshes for prototyping your game, and it's also a really good tool because it saves you a lot of time. At the same time, we need to be cautiously optimistic, I would say, because there is also a lot of hype. This
Yeah.
hype that is being driven by this multi-billion-dollar investments. But this tech is useful, but we're also nowhere near replacing human creators. So I think we need to also be a bit cautious about AI's role. I think it's also good to use, for example, these large language models to create the tools that then you use to create your game. So that can actually speed up your development process. At some point, for example, I was dealing with a very complicated bug in break and repeat, and actually asked a language model, "Oh, can you create a tool for me to visualize what the code is doing?" And then I was able to use that to debug and find what's the actual problem. So it's really useful if you know how to use it. And I think the problem might be that the limitations are very subtle. The limitations are very hidden away from you in a way, but they're also very deep in the sense that these models can be wrong and they can be wrong with a lot of confidence.
Mm-hmm.
So that's very dangerous if you don't know the subject well enough. Or they can just, oh, here's the code that you asked me for. And then there's maybe a lot of problems there. And if you don't know what you're looking at, then you're just going to fall into a trap. And then you're going to waste 10 times more time by trying to debug that code. Uh, so in that sense, we need to be really careful. And then there's so many different angles to this. And that's why I think it's such a fascinating topic, because you have all these concerns about where does the training data come from?
Mm-hmm.
Who owns the copyright to the things that are produced by these models? You have all these concerns about energy consumption because it's especially the training process of some of these big models takes an insane amount of energy. So there's also
True.
environmental concerns in all of this. So it's so nuanced and so complex that we probably don't have the time to touch on all of these topics, but
No.
I just think it's very fascinating. I think it's important that people think about all of these things.
Absolutely, and it in ways that you used it were time savers, which you mentioned earlier. Being efficient in your dev journey is really helpful. Do you think that looking at how you used AI for the visualization component, just as one example, but also just looking at that, another way to think of it is just like talking through a problem with it. We spoke earlier about the dev journey kind of being in a vacuum. Would you say that with where AI is on a conversational level too, is it something that can assist when you are in that vacuum, when you are hitting walls, when you do need maybe not a second opinion, but someone or something to bounce ideas off and get feedback and kind of open up outside of that vacuum. I'm just thinking about what we were talking about with how you approach AI and some of the emotional sides of game development and working in a silo.
I think that you have a very interesting angle there as well. And to be honest, I didn't think about that one so much, but you do have a point. I think to some extent, when you are stuck with a problem, it can actually be really good. Even just
Mm-hmm.
the fact that you're writing something down to try to explain the problem to an AI might help
True.
you already come up with a solution by yourself. Uh, this thing that in software development is called the rubber duck debugging. When you're just talking to a rubber duck and just explaining the problem, you come up with a solution. So in that sense, it's actually really useful already. But I think you have a point. It's a good way to stop stop you from being in this vacuum. At the same time, you need to be careful because depending on how some of these language models are trained, they have a tendency to be yes men, and
Yeah.
they are just going to be this, you know, almost obnoxious people that are not people, these obnoxious models that are just going to tell you yes to everything you're saying and saying, oh, you are actually brilliant, you're actually a genius. So you're going to be careful of that. It becomes a bit of like an echo chamber. It's just you in it.
Yeah.
I
Uh,
think I think that was actually one of the points that people were raising after the update to ChatGPT to GPT 4.1. People were saying, "Wow, I can just say anything to this AI, and it will just say, wow, this is so brilliant."
that's a great idea no matter what.
Yeah, so that
Yeah.
is also something to be aware of.
Yeah, that's a good point. Back to break and to repeat specifically, do you have a timeline when you is there a Discord for this community yet?
Yes, there is the Discord, and you can probably put the link up somewhere. I will share it with you. Yes,
Great.
there's a Discord, and we're also on Blue Sky and Twitter or X or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And the game already has also a Steam page, so you can also go ahead and wishlist it.
Fantastic. Yeah, definitely worth wish listing this game. Um, I haven't shown it. I'll have to show it later, but there's a piece of this game. The way it works is that before doing the heist, the best thing to do is to you get the location, you go in and scout it, and you actually plan out every action in a timeline. And once you do that, you can go back and execute the timeline. There's a chance that there are things you didn't see, you didn't realize you'll wake someone up while robbing a house, for instance. But I've done it where you can go through your whole plan, let it run freely, and escape with all the loot. And there's something just very satisfying about watching your plan play out perfectly and execute it. You have multiple people doing their tasks lined up on a single timeline, and it's very satisfying to get out there with the loot and be like, my plan worked perfectly. When that can happen, doesn't always work that way, obviously. But
Yeah, it will mostly depend on the quality of your intel. Because maybe there was an alarm system that you didn't know about, or there will be a lock that is a lot harder to break, or something like that. But I think it's a kind of like a win-win situation in the sense that if you make a plan and it works perfectly, then it's really satisfying. But if then everything just doesn't work out at all, and there's alarms ringing everywhere, and you're being
yeah,
chased down, and someone gets injured, and so on, it's kind of funny as well. So it's unsatisfying or funny. So I think it's a win-win. Yeah.
yeah, yep. Well, it's a very fun game, uh, unique in some ways, which is always refreshing as well. And just playing, I'll say, playing a bit of The Sims from the burglar standpoint sometimes is how it feels, which is definitely
Yeah, yeah,
fun.
that's exactly what it is. Yeah.
Yep. Well,
So
anything
that you
else
don't
you'd like
have this,
to? Sorry, go ahead.
except that you don't have this kind of like weird vacuum that the burglar has in Sims, right? That you have just sucking all the things, all the
Yeah,
valuable things from your life, I think, right? Or am I making this up?
No,
I don't know.
I think like Crazy Bag, right? I'd have to go
Yeah,
back. The
yeah, yeah, yeah.
original one,
Also,
the bag. Maybe that's what a special item, a Easter egg item to add is you get the Sims burglar
oh,
outfit
yeah.
in a bag.
Maybe you just need to have pay to win.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah, if you pay
That's
20 bucks, you get the infinite capacity bag.
yeah,
Fine.
that's a good DLC right there, right? Good,
Yeah, yeah,
good
yeah.
plan. People will love that, for sure. Anything else you want to share about the game, the plan, the date? Definitely, everyone should go. Can wish list it now on Steam. What I'm playing is an early alpha version. Is that correct? We're seeing here. Did you
Yes,
say? Yep.
yeah. I sent you this version, which is a very, very early build of the game. It's missing most of the content, but we have most of the big systems in place. So most of the game mechanics are in place, and the engine is quite solid. So it allows you to keep adding new things rather easily. We still
Yeah.
don't have a release date. What we are planning to do is to put together a nicely working version to participate in the Steam Next Fest. So that is the plan for now. So if people want to try out the game, they will be able to in the Steam Next Fest. And
Great.
then we're probably going to go for an early access release, but we still don't have a date. Currently in talks with a few different publishers. Still haven't signed anything.
All right.
So I think the future of the game is also going to depend a bit on what happens with these negotiations and what publisher is going to be the one that's publishing the game.
Well, that's a very exciting phase to be in, talking with several different publishers. So congratulations to reaching this point. I'm excited to have a playable build of the game. It's a lot of fun, growing my team, executing some heists, sometimes setting off an alarm by accident, and having to run out and lose my intel. But it's a great time. So I encourage everyone to check out Break, Enter, and Repeat. And thanks so much for joining me today and
But yeah, this
talking
was a
through
lot of
it.
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, this was so much fun, and also thank you for the space. And wish you all the best with this almost new project that you are having. Yeah. Is this episode number what?
Is this 4 or 5? I think 3 have been released so far, so I think this will
Okay.
be 5 when it's ready. So,
Yeah,
yep,
so that is also very exciting.
yeah. Thank you. All right. Thanks so much, and thanks for everyone tuning in or listening in, however you decide to hear
Yeah,
the story of Federico, which is a really impressive one, as each game improved.
thank you so much. Yeah, have a good one.